Welcome back to MCU and Comics. My name is Peter Levi. Today we have on tap a lengthy news digest going through all the bits of news I thought were interesting for the last, it's almost been 2 weeks since the last post. The written version was put up a couple days ago, and I won't literally read it out, of course. We'll just kind of go through it beat by beat. Just as a side note, I have been experimenting a little bit with camera placement. Ideally with these things, you're supposed to have the camera looking up at you. Psychologically, it's supposed to give you an air of more authority, but people didn't like me looking upwards to look at my monitor screen. So since I don't have a tripod, the only way we can avoid that issue is to set up the webcam on top of the monitor. So I'm going to be looking up, at least for now. If you have a preference either way, that at least is within my ability to shift around a bit. But I imagine for most of you, it doesn't matter. So we're not going to focus on it too much. I just thought I'd bring up why the camera angle is a little different. Off the top, we had Richard Nebbins. I forget if he was writing for the direct or the Illuminati for this one. I think it was the direct. I went through in my Scooper post, the video for which is also up, that his information, all of it, or at least most of it, comes from Daniel, even though he's not mentioned. So we can assume this information is from Daniel, just Nevin's reporting it. He says the development of an X-Men film, currently provisionally titled Mutants, is underway. I wouldn't take that provisional title too seriously. I believe Victoria Alonso, who's a EP at Marvel, has said she'd like to get away from the term X-Men. I don't think we'll dive into what the men means in terms of language, but I suspect for marketing reasons and toy reasons, it's unlikely the MCU will actually change that title. Far too iconic, whatever else they might think about it. Anyways, that's an aside. So Nevin says such a project is underway. Charles Murphy echoed this. And I believe it is the project he announced, announced back in 2019, which he said was for May 2024 at the time. But he refused to say what it was other than it was big. I can't think of anything else that would be referred to as big or anything else that would have been 5 years in the future, particularly now that we know Fantastic Four is coming sooner. So I think the two are linked. And if that's correct, that means the decision on this project was made about 1.5 years ago. Other than that, I don't think it tells us too much. I believe that this is something the Russo brothers can do if they want to. Pardon me, the track record in the MCU is impeccable. Their films are always on people's top lists. So we know they want Wolverine. They've expressed interest in the X-Men as well. I suspect if they want them, they will get them. Although what that will mean is hard to say exactly. The Russo brothers are really, really good at, A, trolling, but B, not giving things away, really. So yeah, I don't think we'll get too much more out of that until casting starts happening. But I do believe it. I do believe it. Next up, on Ant-Man 3, we got confirmation from the trades, Hollywood Reporter and Variety, that T.I., the actor who plays Dave, won't be back. This is not surprising. This is just confirmation of something we've been pretty sure of since 2019. T.I. has done some strange things. The last thing involved his daughter, and I suspect that's part of the reason he's removed. Also, in terms of story, the Scott Lang's trio of buddies that were so important in the first Ant-Man were pretty superfluous in the sequel, so you don't really need them all back. They're a bit like the Warriors 3 and Thor. If you're not going to focus on them, they're better off removed in one way, shape, or form. Although I doubt T.I. will see T.I. killed. I just think he won't be there. Probably be referred to. There'll probably be a line, but honestly, who's showing up to Ant-Man for T.I.? Next up, Secret Invasion. So Daniel had his casting info put through the Illuminati first, but this is his information, and by his information, I mean Production Weekly. So 3 characters were posted for Secret Invasion. 1, a villain, or the villain. Male series regular, ages 50 to 60, the main antagonist. Female role 1, 40 to 50 years old. Series regular will share many scenes with Nick Fury. Honestly, that sounds like a role Maria Hill could do, but apparently that's not who's going to be doing that. Female role 2, 20s to 30s, strong supporting role to be played by a younger female actor. Typically these things have race specificity attached to them. I don't see it here. I suspect it was part of the listing though. I think Marvel has made, Marvel has. Sarah Finn, the casting director, has said that they don't care about the races of the characters anymore. But that's clearly not true. That's just PR spin. They do. I'm just not sure what to expect here. The villain, especially since it's going to be an alien, probably could be anyone. The female roles really depend on who they're based on, if anyone. So the Illuminati thinks that the main villain will be the Emperor of the Skrulls, but I disagree with that. Marvel likes to simplify what's happened in the comics, and since we've only had positive portrayals of Skrulls, I suspect this is going to be a Kree villain or just someone unassociated with it. They also think the younger character is Abigail Brand. Now, Abigail Brand has been floating around the rumorville for a long time, mostly from places like 4chan, although Mikey Sutton also threw it out there. She could technically also be the older character. I think in terms of thematically, it makes sense if she's younger, because so most of you won't know who Abigail Brand is. So she takes over as leader of Sword. So it would make a lot more sense for her to be younger, so the transition between Fury and her is more felt, and him guiding her feels more natural. But this is all just speculation, so you can take it or leave it. On Blade, Daniel dropped casting information in two batches. I have no idea why he did it twice, but since there's just 3 roles. So the first one is dubbed Ruby. Keep in mind these are pseudonyms. Female, African American. You can see what I mean about racial distinctions for characters. 15 years old, submit 13 to 17. Thoughtful, serious, burdened by growing up in a complex world. Who isn't growing up in a complex world? Billionaire babies, maybe? I don't know. Strong supporting role. Lucy, 20s. A tough young woman who has been on the run after her mother's tragic death under mysterious circumstances. She is tired of living off the grid. Finally, Betsy, 20 to 29, black / African American. So if you're not familiar, African American is specific to people who are, God, it's hard to find politically correct terminology, who are black in the USA. And you tend to be called that no matter where you're, like that's the term used no matter where you're from, African American. But if you're outside of the US, if you're in the UK, for example, black is the terminology. At least that's what I'm used to. So when you see that in a casting call, where there's a little slash, basically it means anyone of African descent, whether they're from the US or not. That's all that means, if you ever see that and get confused. So scoopers are speculating that Ruby is Blade's daughter. So this is a weird one. And this is something that I wouldn't have been aware of the context if I hadn't read about it. So Blade does not have a daughter in the comics, but there were plans in 2015 for him to have one. But Marvel kiboshed this because the creators that came up with it were white. So the idea is around in the firmament, but it's never actually appeared, in panel in a comic book. I don't think this character has to be his daughter. It could be, sure. But I don't think that's really all that relevant to a guy who's a vampire. I suppose the idea would be to help give him an emotional arc or something to grab onto. Marvel likes that. But yeah, I don't think it has to be his daughter for that to be the case, but it could be. As for the other characters, I don't know. I'm not super familiar with Blade as an IP. I saw the first two Wesley Snipes films, but I don't recall having ever read the comic. I don't think I did. Blade's one of those characters where he kind of fell off around the time I was reading comics, and he's never really been able to maintain a comic for very long, so I'm just not super familiar. So they could be original characters, or given that these seem to be potentially people who are in the series a lot, based on characters in the comics, but we'll just have to wait and see. Next up, Captain Marvel 2. So last time there was a baffling casting call from Daniel where he said an actor who is like Timothée Chalamet or Michael B. Jordan. And I pointed out how cross-typed those two actors are. It's difficult to think of something more different than that. And so Casey Walsh, the editor-in-chief of GWW, Geeks Worldwide, he offered out what looks like a correction, and I suspect this is from Daniel, that it's not Chalamet and Michael B. Jordan, it is Jordan and John Boyega. Now, I don't think those two are exactly the same either, but they're a little bit more of a type, which we'll get into in a sec here. So Walsh speculates this is Blue Marvel. Scoopers are hot to trot on Blue Marvel. Anytime anything is suggested for anything that could remotely be Blue Marvel, it's Blue Marvel. It's unclear to me if there's genuine excitement for it, because it's not a character that's popular. He's fairly recent. He's Monica Rambeau's love interest. He's kind of like Marvel's Black Superman, but without the history. He's just sort of been, crudely inserted into Marvel's past. But yeah, in terms of his power set, I don't think we'll see that, by the way, in the MCU. It's too much. It's too powerful. But yeah, they're very excited about him. Because I don't know the character at all, I have no excitement until I see how the character is portrayed. But what's funny about the Boyega Jordan thing is those are the exact same two characters who were proposed for J.J. Abrams' Superman. And I think with Blue Marvel, even though those two guys are very different, Michael B. Jordan's a huge frickin' dude, very big. John Boyega is more of a compact guy. He's got that comedic range. I feel like Boyega is like he has a acting capacity that's maybe a little beyond Jordan. I think Jordan's really good at what he does, but I don't think you can have Jordan in like just a funny role. So as a Superman template, that looked bizarre. But for Blue Marvel, maybe. But yeah, I take that with a grain of salt, though, because the casting listing was just using them as templates, not those specific individuals. And I suspect it is casting shorthand for, established African-American / black actor. That's what I think. So following this, an anonymous writer for that hashtag show, who called themselves, I think it's The Incredible Hulk, something like that. And that hashtag show, even though a lot of scoopers have come from there, has not put out a scoop in a very, very long time. It might not have been since Charles Murphy left in beginning of 2019, something like that. But anyway, so this anonymous person put out a rumor for Captain Marvel 2 that said Korvac, or it's Korvac or Korvax, I can't remember, will be the villain. He'll be the bad guy. And I recognize this rumor, something that's floated around before. A Redditor, the Marvel Scoop Master, I mentioned him in the Scooper video and article. He said the same thing back in 2019. And what's funny about it is that at that time, it got specifically debunked by Lords of the Long Box. I think it debunked by their original source, the Black Knight.